I've got a funny feeling you may be taking Jeremy Corbyn's side on this. Is he right to scrap SATs tests?
Yes, I definitely think he is right to scrap SATs tests as they stand. I think they're a very unreliable test of what students and schools are doing. They're causing huge stress amongst teachers and pupils, and they need to be got rid of. And other systems and reliable systems of assessment can be found.
Well, what's unreliable about them?
Because what's happening is schools are finding that their whole future is judged on a few hours in an exam.
Wait a minute, when you mean their whole future is judged on how well they're teaching children? I mean, that's a pretty good way of judging a school, isn't it?
Well, what's happening is that it's a teaching to the test, and the teaching to the test is not giving the students a rounded,
but there's no requirement.
There's
no requirement on teachers to teach to the test. It's just to make sure they do know the stuff that is in the test, because this is some basic numeracy and literacy in terms of the skills that children are expected to have by a certain age. Why does that in any way impinge on children's ability to learn those things or other things?
When you've got a situation where schools can be closed down or taken over by an academy chain if they've not got the right results in these SATs, then obviously you've created a kind of environment where teaching to the test happens because, schools are very fearful of their futures and their jobs.
But hold on a minute, if a school is doing a good job... No, Francis, if a school is doing a good job, their children will do well in the SATs tests.
I think that the SATs are a game, aren't they? They're not a reliable test of what students can actually do. Many students with special needs, with different diverse ways of expressing themselves, don't do that well.
Different and diverse ways of expressing themselves.
Exams are a very unreliable way, and there's a lot of research that shows this, very unreliable way of showing what actually students can do.
All right, but now hold on a minute. Look, I completely accept not all children learn the same way, and not all children express themselves the same way. And also, there are brilliant people who will go on to do far greater things than anyone who's got grade A's at GCSE or A-level. But the point is that we need to make sure that kids can read and write and they can add up. And we have to test them to find that out. Otherwise, we're just taking the word of teachers, and we know that we need to have some external assessment. Why is this cause stress? Because you said this is one of the reasons. You said it's unreliable, and also these tests put huge stress on teachers and on pupils. I mean, if someone wants to come in, I get tested every day on whether I'm doing my job or not. But what are the listening figures? Are more people listening? Are they listening for longer? Do people want to come on the show? There are lots of different tests that I face, and most people in their jobs every day have some version of a test of are they achieving what they're supposed to achieve. People have regular assessments from their bosses, from their peers, and others. This is quite normal in jobs. Why should teachers be uniquely not tested on a clear way of testing whether they're good at their job, which is how well children are doing? Why would that stress teachers out more than anyone else who is regularly tested in their job?
Because if you're feeling that your job is on the line, you're going to get sacked if you don't get these sorts of results in a test. What teachers doing? They're in the learning game. They're trying to help children learn, and to help children learn, there's a lot of evidence that teaching to the test doesn't encourage.
But they don't have to teach to the test, Francis.
Nurturing children's reading skill and love of reading, for example, is about getting them to read widely and to enjoy the whole spectrum of amazing sort of children's literature that's out there, not constantly be giving them mock tests all the time.
Francis, there is no requirement on teachers or head teachers or any school to give mock tests. They do that so they can game the system and try to make their kids look like they're learning more and do better in the test than they actually are. Wouldn't it be better if good teachers and good head teachers just made sure that children were being taught the curriculum, they were learning in a fun, good, nurturing environment? Those children will do just fine in the tests.
Unfortunately, that's not the case, because the test is a game that you have to play. And, teachers are having to play that game because of government policy, whereby they'll be shut down if they don't get a
You're not shut down. You're not shut down unless you are absolutely failing children.
Nurturing reading for pleasure, is something that teachers need to be trusted to do. There are ways of assessing what students are learning quite reliably by low-stakes, randomized assessments. And we also need to change the policy environment where teachers and schools are being threatened with closure if they don't meet certain totally unrealistic benchmarks.
Unrealistic benchmarks that children should be able to read and write and add up.
Well, that's not true, is it? If you're teaching to the test and students are passing the tests, they may not be able to actually independently read. They've just been drilled.
But but Francis, the teachers who are doing that should be sacked because they're not doing their job.
I mean, that's the ridiculous situation we've got at the moment, is that children have been drilled to pass these tests, but actually haven't got the independent love of reading, love of writing that they should have done.
And yes, by teachers who are failing them. Those teachers are failing their pupils.
Teachers are not. Those teachers are doing amazing jobs under very difficult circumstances and trying to do what they can. But the policy environment created by this government is shocking. They've really tried to kill a joy of learning. I mean, I've seen that myself.
Well, I mean, yeah, I've got lots and lots of friends with children at primary school who are not feeling that at all. I mean, you might have seen it in your school where you're teaching, but I'm saying if a teacher is teaching to the test and they're just rote learning their children to pass the test, frankly, that teacher has no business being in the classroom. They're clearly not up to the job, because if they're doing their job properly, those children will be doing just fine in that test. Let's talk about what's been happening at the National Education Union Conference. They have had a very key speaker yesterday, Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, who announced yesterday he wants to abolish primary school SATs test. We'll talk about that now. Plus also the 4 in 5 teachers who say they've seen a rise in pupils with mental health problems. Let's talk about all of it with Sue Atkins. She's former deputy head teacher and a parenting expert. Good morning to you, Sue.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, let's talk first of all just about what Jeremy Corbyn had to say. He was greeted with a standing ovation, cheers and chanting of "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn" by these teachers. I think we can safely say where their political allegiances lie. He's always long been a friend of the teachers, and teachers are a friend of Jeremy Corbyn. But his call for an end to SATs, arguing on the basis that he says Labour trusts teachers, you are professionals, you know your job, you know your students. But wasn't the whole reason why these tests were brought in to test what primary school pupils actually knew at 7 and 11? The whole point of it was because they didn't know an awful lot, and we didn't know what teachers were teaching.
Well, it's an interesting debate, isn't it? Because I welcome the move away from obsessive teaching to the test, because you do need to make sure that teacher training, though, is very robust, and you do have to trust your teachers to make professional observations about each child in their class and, of course, move them forward and keep up the standards. But it all went too far the other way. I've got friends who are still teachers who are very, very stressed. You've got head teachers who then, their jobs are on the line about the league tables.
They should be on the line. They should be. I mean, look, the worst thing that happens is if I do my job wrong is that I could libel someone, I could breach regulations. The worst thing that happens is I lose my job. That's the worst thing. But I'm not going to ruin a child's life forever by failing to teach them to read and write and add up. But when you say teaching to the test, the teachers who teach to the test are bad teachers.
No, they're not bad teachers.
Yes, they are. They're not good teachers.
Listen, it's very narrow, the way the curriculum has gone, the way it's become obsessed with data. What do we do with the data? We've lost creativity as well. The children, it depends on how the school handles those tests and how the parents handle those tests. Of course we need to have some form of assessment. And of course, he's made this statement and it sounds marvellous, and he's not in government and all of these different things, because things all change. But even I can see there's been a change with Damien Hines in the way they're moving Ofsted inspections slightly away from the obsessive league table data-driven thing where children are just numbers and not real people. And we have seen an increase in children's well-being and mental health declining and under stress. So it's a balance. You have to find a balance. Nothing in life is completely black or white.
No, I accept that. But surely the simple fact of finding out whether children can read and write and do basic maths is a crucial thing. The reason we're told that the curriculum has narrowed. No, what they have to teach and what they're tested on is narrowed, because a lot of teachers who weren't teaching children useful things like how to read were going, but they're really happy children. They're really good at drama. That's no use to you. You need a child who's happy and who can read and write as well. This is about focusing on the stuff that will actually make children's lives better.
No, I understand that, but there is a method and a way to go about getting that, broad curriculum and that balance in mental health. I mean, the high-stakes testing culture we've got here in England, we are the most tested in the world.
But it's not high stakes. It's only high stakes. The only reason teaching done to the test is because teachers are told to by head teachers who are worried that they're not already doing a good job. A head teacher with good teachers who is teaching properly and the children are doing the full curriculum never have to fear the test because the test will show that they're doing a good job.
Well, now we also test, or they're going to, there's been a lot of uproar and there's going to be a march next week about testing 4-year-olds. Now, that's not actually assessing teachers. That's actually assessing parents and childminders.
No, it's not. It's his testing teacher because what it's showing is what children know when they arrive. I could have had a teacher. How can you measure? How can you measure how well a child has actually developed in the 3 years they've been at school by the time they're 7? Or 2 years, if you don't know what the benchmark was. So, for instance, when my child started school, she could already read. A teacher could say, well, she's a great reader at 7. She was already a good reader at 5. You haven't done that. I did that.
Yes, but what this does do to parents who are feeling under pressure, who are not as articulate and well-educated as yourself, they feel very under pressure. Now, I think it's about common sense. We need to make sure that parents are supported to understand that giving a child a tablet at 2 to play on the iPad for hours is not the best use of learning vocabulary, language development.
I have a funny feeling the parents who do that know that already.
Well, the thing is, we need to support that. Keep on banging on about the importance of singing nursery rhymes, even if they are Baa Black Sheep and people get upset about that too. But we do need to make sure that, the very vulnerable ones that do need some advice and some help understand that. And then we need to find a balance about teachers, because you do need to assess children. You do need to see if they're making progress. But I have been in numerous schools and, of course, have been a deputy head for many years before that, and I have seen the undue pressure it puts on the parents, the children and the teachers. So I do see it from both sides, but as you know, I try and be a balance about these things, and we need to try and find new ways forward. What I think this Labour business is all about is, it's all great and it sounds great as a soundbite. They're not even in government yet or whenever. So, things change enormously. But at least we're having a discussion.
At least we're having a discussion, absolutely. But again, I think as a general rule, if you are in a profession and you're supposedly thinking you are highly respected as a teacher, that you should expect there should be some independent adjudication of how well you're doing that job when it's such an important job. Just finally, let's get to this issue of children as young as 9, according to this survey of teachers, talking about suicide in class, and teachers saying that more and more of them are seeing a rise in pupils experiencing mental health problems. Now, there's often a very wide description. Now, any child experiencing just normal teenage angst, we're not talking about suicide here, but normal teenage angst is now classed as having a mental health problem. But undoubtedly, we are seeing a rise in these issues among our youngsters.
Yeah, so we need to look at why is that and what can we do as parents, teachers, educators and everybody involved in looking after children or raising them, that they have a happy, relaxed, positive kind of childhood. And they have to have, I think, in schools, perhaps specific counsellors, because of the cutbacks and all the rest of it. You do need people who are trained to be able to listen, support, nurture, guide and help children who are suffering, perhaps. You need to go to the root cause of that, what's happening at home as well.
Yeah. And again, spotting these things earlier and getting them the help. Sue Atkins, lovely to speak to you as always, former deputy head teacher and parenting expert. Her kids would have all passed those stats, I'll tell you that for sure. She's in charge.
England school children are the most tested in the world and are subjected to particularly high levels of high stress, high stake assessments at the ages 7 and 11. Other economies that we compete with don't do this to their school children. Why should we be doing it?
If, as supporters of SATs say is true, that they're only there to assess the standards of the schools, to grade the schools and not the pupils, how will we know how schools are performing without SATs?
Well, they don't grade them very well because there are only 2 tests twice in the school's lifetime, and we have now schools teaching to the test rather than providing a broad and balanced curriculum and an effective assessment measure to how the children in that school are doing. And what's perverse about the current system is if you've got 4 or 5 children, say at year 6, that's the last year of junior school, who've got special educational needs, then the whole school is marked down on how it's done in its SATs. So should we be punishing schools that have more children?
Well, I take that point, but we haven't addressed the question about how we rate schools. I mean, I take the point there's only 2 tests. It's not effective. The schools with high numbers of children with special education needs will suffer, but there's still a system that allows people to figure out how schools are performing, and without the SATs test, how do we do that?
Well, we'll be consulting with the profession over the next 6 months, parents and other stakeholders to just develop a new, fairer, broader and more useful primary assessment system. I mean, we're going to trust the professionals and the parents in this instance who have been telling us now for a number of years that these tests are just not working and putting untold pressure on children, parents and teachers. I mean, we saw the headlines just yesterday. 40% of teachers are now saying they're going to leave the profession within 5 years. For every teacher that's entering the profession, one's leaving. And SATs is part of that. The tests are part of that. Pay and conditions and government just not trusting teachers to do their job is the main part of it. There are now 13 directed tests by government in primary schools. I mean, that's just ridiculous. No other system on the planet has that many.
My question would be, when it comes to the following exams like Common Entrance, GCSEs, A-levels, if kids have never had to sit exams, how will they cope with those pressures?
Well, we're not saying kids won't sit exams. You know, there'll be end-of-term assessments, end-of-year assessments. So children will be measured on a whole range of assessments. Most good pedagogy, the way teachers teach, teachers assess every lesson, every day, every week, and that is what we're going to be looking for. That's what the best systems do. They don't rely on just 2 tests at the age of year 7 and at the age of 7 and 11 to assess how good a school is. Well, I think parents deserve more information, actually, and more qualitative information than the current SAT tests provide.
Yeah, talking of parents, Mike, I think the worrying aspect of these essay tests is the claim by many parents that although these exams aren't supposed to affect the future of their kids, when they turn up at secondary school, they say that it does, and that they are graded as, according to how well they did in the SAT exams. Is there any credible evidence for that?
Well, I was being asked earlier about, how do we get to a situation currently with all these tests that children get to secondary school and they're still not reading and writing effectively as they should be at year 7. And almost that answers its own question that these tests are not fit for purpose. Secondary schools need proper information about the quality of that child that's coming on so they can prepare adequately to meet their unique needs. And actually, these tests just don't do that.
Do we need to start looking at other exams then, GCSEs? I mean, if we're going to talk about exams preparing children for life, do GCSEs prepare children for life? Do A-levels?
Well, at the moment, we're looking at Key Stage 1 and 2 SATs, and we're going to remove the baseline assessment at nursery. When I was a teacher, it was really quite interesting. You could talk to your nursery nurses. I was a primary school teacher for 10 years. So they could tell you with almost a 95, 96% accuracy how many GCSEs that child would get at 16. So teachers are extraordinarily well qualified to assess children as it currently stands, and these tests are just huge bureaucratic impositions. Personally, I'm still in favour of a sort of gold standard around GCSE A-level, but that they're not for discussion now. We're gonna build a more qualitative system, in addition to saying what we've already said about restoring the budgets of schools. Since 2015, this government has taken £1.7 billion out of the school system. All schools are now suffering. We have head teachers cleaning toilets, head teachers
on 6-figure salaries.
All those things, cleaning, cooking, having to do...
Why did you leave? Why did you leave primary schools? Then why did you leave? I mean, I can remember 15, 20 years ago, I was endlessly doing TV shows saying, wouldn't it be great to get more men working in primary schools, primary school education, because so few do it. And now I'm talking to one, but you left.
Well, I was inspired to do it. I had a decade in the profession. I also, in my borough in South Manchester, I think at one stage the only infant male teacher.
I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Did that, and no, it was a great career, but just for personal reasons, I should have gone into management, but I ended up going down a more political avenue, but not being an MP at the time. So I changed a career, but I would go back to it tomorrow. It's still the best job in the world.
A lot of people say a lot of people have a lot of problems with exams, or some people have a lot of problems with exams. Do we have to actually think long term about a different way of assessing children, or do we just accept that children are all different? We can't treat them all the same, no matter how well a comprehensive education system functions. And actually, you're going to have bright kids that are good at exams. You're going to have bright kids that aren't so good at exams, and you have not so bright kids who aren't good at either.
Well, these sats are a very, very blunt tool. But if you were to ask any member of Parliament for their personal testimony about the people who are coming through their case surgeries on a Friday, increasing levels of young people, even at primary school with mental health, who are struggling at school because of stress and other problems, school phobias, struggling to get hold of mental health services, CAM services. It's a huge rise in our casework load over the last few years. And I think, some of that is what we're looking at here, because it's not just school budgets that are being cut, it's all those infrastructure budgets, local.
Although I can't help but wonder that other factors, I can't imagine that, I can't help but think rather that other factors are at play, because I was extremely tested at school back in my day, as our generations were. We were still subject to all manner of pressures, and I suspect there were all manners of mental health concerns as well, but they weren't being diagnosed or recognised. Mike Caine, Shadow Schools Minister, lovely talking to you.